Yes, it can be scary when all the things that you believe, you suddenly come to not believe them anymore, but in many ways that is the return back to the authentic you, the uncluttered you, away from the fake you that was given so much misinformation, to return to the uncluttered you, which has more of the real information. And at that point you do need a sophistication and a certain sort of stoic force of will to drive you forward, just as Neo did in the film to drive him forward. One could say it's the loss of innocence. Innocence is beautiful, but there's a day when all of humanity will have to grow up. And as you embark upon your own journey, you will become much more sophisticated. For example, when people hear something they don't like, they prickle and get angry. If you're a sophisticated person, you can listen to all sorts of theories that you don't necessarily agree with without reacting. For example, I went to a lecture the other night with a famous scientist who talked for an hour and 15 minutes about the Big Bang. I don't personally believe in the Big Bang, but I wasn't up for having a fight with a lecturer. I was really interested to hear why he believed in the Big Bang, and what his methodology was, and what his science was, and his reasons for believing in it. And you may well disagree with some of the things that I've been saying, but a sophistication of self allows you to listen. Because in the end, many of the things you do believe today, once you go down this path, through the hidden door that I've been speaking of, you will realize that they were just encumbrances that you took on, that you borrowed from other people, books, various dogma of one kind or another. So, for example, you may be able to relate to times when you have suffered a loss of innocence, when you've discovered that your boyfriend or your partner has been unfaithful to you, or the day that you had to straighten up and go take your driving test, and so on. These are all moments on the path where you have to become a grown-up, a real being. And very much this journey beyond enlightenment requires you to develop a metaphysical, spiritual, and psychological maturity. But in that maturity, you can't beat yourself up. You can't decry the situation, because we have incarnated, as I said in the third liberation, into a world that is unjust. And there are all sorts of hidden forces that are hindering you, especially when you want to do something that's holy and good. But some of those forces that you think are outside of you that are hindering you are in fact manifestations of you hindering yourself. Etheric beings in a parallel evolution that blip in and out of this one might seem jolly unlikely, but you may be familiar with the work of Jose Escamilla, the Hispanic-American researcher who has photographed an etheric being he calls a flying rod. There are some photos of them in the CD-ROM that accompanies this series. The flying rods are anywhere from a few inches long to 50 feet in length. They have fins that oscillate along their translucent etheric bodies, and they fly through the air at speeds of thousands of miles an hour. They also exist underwater. They've probably always been here. They are part of the beings that are in the outer matrix. Escamilla discovered the flying rods by accident when his video camera was left on one day. While editing his film, he noticed the strange flying rods zip into the frame, turn, and then fly out again, all in the space of a few frames. Jose Escamilla is real cool and innovative. You can find his work on www.roswellrods.com. A friend of mine called Ralph Miller runs a sacred temple in Brazil known as Heart of the Initiate, where they perform shamanistic ceremonies with a sacred brew found in the Amazon. Ralph told me that during the session at his temples, celestial beings frequently appear. They seem to dance and move about between the participants, healing people. A friend of mine had a long-term injury in her hip from being a ballet dancer, and she told me that on her third temple journey, a group of women came to her from another world, dressed with headscarves, and they placed long golden needles in her hip, and they also had certain herbal remedies with them that came from that inner space. And when she came out of the session many hours later, her hip was healed, and it has never troubled her since. That was 4 years ago. Medicine will go to another place soon. Healing the etheric body might be a major advance in our knowing. In all the mayhem of our world, the final redemption and healing is also here. The rescue is underway.